We are Hunt and Darton. I am Hunt.
And I am Darton.
And we are artists and your hosts. And actually, it's probably best that you just kind of lower your expectations from the start.
That's right. It's something we recommend when participating in any of our art, really. And that way, we can only go up from there. We've been working together for 10 years, making work with people in their villages, towns, cities, and countries.
And we are here to help you not freak out about all this new Arts Council stuff. Why has it changed? Why?
It's okay, Hunt.
Thanks.
Relax.
Okay, I'm okay.
Just breathe.
I'm okay.
We are here to talk you
And not
through
just us, thankfully.
the investment principles the Arts Council are suggesting should be at the heart
See what
of
we did there?
everything we do.
Very good. These investment principles, or IPs, fancy, are tools for making art well, and you will definitely need to talk about them when you apply for funding from the Arts Council.
Now, the good news is that a lot of these things we are already doing.
It's true. Most of us naturally care about people and the world around us, and that's what they're about, really.
You are a functioning, sentient being. You've got this.
Nice. Welcome to IPTV. Over 4 episodes, we are going to chat through the 4 investment principles to demystify by talking frankly to brilliant people across the sector to unpick what it all means and what we might do for all the right reasons. Each episode comes from a different location where we've invited people from that city or region to have a proper chat about it. There's also an Arts Council representative too.
There is, which is good, you know, because I think it's their fault.
Yes, it is. So where are we today?
We are in Leeds at the incredibly brilliant artistic hub at Holbeck, which is home to the prolific Slung. We feel very at home here as we're in their pub, a former working men's club.
And who have we with us today? And you know, what's happening anyway?
Well, we've got other people with us. Few. We have Jo Verrant, director at Unlimited, Jessica Sweet, artistic director of Clay, which is the Centre for Live Art Yorkshire, Pauline Mayers, independent artist, and representing the Arts Council, director of museums, Liz Johnson. We also caught up with our hosts, Slung before they set off for a day of filming. That was Alan. And we're also going to meet Roz, one of the founders of local independent coffee shop Out of the Woods, who's going to bring us some much needed cake.
Thank goodness for that. You know, we've got some talent there, haven't we? And cake. So yes, welcome to IPTV. I'm excited. You know, let's do this.
Yes, let's do it.
Darton, here's the question.
Right.
What are the 4 investment principles?
I've got this prepared. Okay, so they are...
Like you knew. That one.
Dynamism, inclusivity and relevance, ambition and quality. Oh, it's upside down.
Very ambitious.
Very ambitious. And environmental responsibility.
Yeah, it's quite a lot, isn't it?
It's quite
I think
challenging.
one IP at a time. So what is today's IP?
It is dynamism.
But do we know what this investment principle means?
Yes, we do. Kinda.
Really?
Kind of. Maybe not the data bit.
Yeah.
Are you going to tell them
Yeah, I'm going to try and
where
tell them.
we're at with it right now?
I'll try.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, I'll attempt to. Okay, here goes. The world changes.
We learnt this in the pandemic.
Yeah. Things change beyond our imagination.
We learnt that in the pandemic.
We did. Thank you, Darton. That's very clear.
Thank you.
Yeah. If we can't change...
We learnt that in the
Right,
pandemic.
that's enough.
Okay.
Okay. If we can't change, adapt, flex to carry on making art in, at worst, adverse times, but also just in an ever-evolving world, we might not be able to do it. And no one wants that.
I think it's about thinking outside the box, problem solving, entrepreneurialism. I think we have all of that resilience and problem solving training because we are artists and we've been living like that for a long time and we need that for this IP, whether we want it or not.
I know, I wish it wasn't true, but it is. Many artists and arts practitioners out there know what we're talking about and the personal precariousness that you take on by committing to a career in the arts.
I mean, take our project Radio Local. Hyperlocal radio, built with and for the people it serves in the city or town we happen to pop up in. The very nature of the show immediately places it in a time and place and moves with the situation as it relies on people for its content. So we hand over the mic, and by doing that, it can't help but remain responsive.
It is high risk, but it's, but in its organic nature, it means that what or how is being said is never the same, but it does rely on a kind of unflinching structure, in this case a radio show, to anchor the art and, ensure quality.
It's true, and it even meant that we could carry on during the pandemic. We persevered.
I always think it's either, that we're either idiots or geniuses. I'm more comfortable with idiot myself. In our idiocy, we don't seem to know how to stop delivering or not to do. We do, right?
And we did, despite the pandemic, reposition the whole Radio Local project online to broadcast into people's homes during lockdown. I wonder what we would have done if we weren't already working on that project.
Well, if it wasn't like radio.
Yeah. I think we would have fought hard.
Yeah, probably. I mean, our Barbican iteration for Culture Mile was created by just picking up the phone. Picking up the phone, getting used to Zoom, and, talking to amazing people in a really complex time. Why did we bother? Why did we bother? Could we have just sat back, saved the money, Was it even the right thing to do?
Why did we?
I don't know. I mean, we do know.
We do know.
Yeah. Because it meant we could all be together, and it meant we could chat and even laugh at a very, very difficult time.
It was actually really powerful, I think. Well, for me anyway, as an artist, because I got to carry on making and putting something out there.
Being useful.
Even though I was just broadcasting from my shed.
Yeah, I know. We've even taken on a kind of more political and vital stance since, so basically we moved with the challenge, and because of that we've grown.
Like a cheese that is left to...
No, not like a cheese.
Left to...
Not like a cheese.
Okay.
How do we position ourselves to flex? How can you, keep moving, living, having an ephemeral nature without kind of risking it all?
Yeah. Well, we know small and nimble helps, but how do you move when you have buildings and bigger teams? And have we really understood what dynamism means? I think we've only just scratched the surface there. There's being resilient in your business model, but then there's the right team to make sure of this, and then the data bit about using technology and information to evolve. I think it's more like constant reinvention.
Wow. Very good question and point. Let's talk to the people who, actually know what they're talking about, and, crack on with talking about the investment principle.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Welcome everyone to IPTV. We're going to start with Jessica. Jessica is art director for Clay, which is the Centre for Live Art Yorkshire. It's a centre for artworks that test boundaries and bats for artists whose practice is hard to define by supporting risk, experimentation and interdisciplinary live artworks. Yeah. Correct. Good. I got it right. Yes.
Carry on.
Okay, Jess, so it would be great to hear how Clay responded to the pandemic and any projects that emerged from that challenging time, and how these projects or experience have influenced, shaped and impacted what's next for Clay.
A lot of it was about the space to engage with other artists, because once we were sort of unitized in such a way, so a lot of people were just like, oh yeah, things like artist coffee mornings and having spaces to talk to other artists and find out how each other were was a big thing, which I think quite a lot of organisations did end up doing in the end, but it was useful to know that was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And it's resource sharing as well, knowing that, okay, well, there are these small pots of funds that you can go for, which will help you if you're an independent artist, because I think, as we know, people who weren't regularly funded or from sort of organisations or didn't have the same sort of backup that organisations do have were financially really worried at that point. So being able to share resources and send things to each other and being like, oh, actually, I know this organisation that's working with this particular subject matter that you're interested in. Maybe that's a fund that you could go for. I can help you write that bid.
We mentioned Zoom. So if we do talk about software, it can often be expensive or something like that. And then maybe by the time you've got it into practice or something like that, it's already out of date. Yeah. How do you begin to deal with that?
Often we don't, is the honest answer, because we just don't have the money or the capacity, because we are such a small team. So a couple of years ago, rules changed around GDPR, and so we had to do something. So we do things when we have to. That's really the answer. But I think speaking about dynamism, the thing that we're trying to do now as a company is switch from being reactive to being proactive. During the pandemic, we had the opportunity to like pause because we're on such like a hamster wheel of doing program all the time, and because of the way that we work is very kind of, well, it's lots of different funding streams, but like mainly commercial. We're not regularly funded, so we stopped doing activity and were able to like write funding bids. I was able to write funding bids, and that was quite like useful for us. So using that opportunity to be like, okay, think about what do we actually need, recognizing that we can sort of make that change now and make decisions about making investments into like particular technologies or systems, ticketing systems, for example, or like changing the way that we use our social media and stuff like that. Really simple but useful stuff. We started working with consultants, which is like a whole new world to me. Looking to other people who know better for advice rather than just having this kind of DIY mentality has been like a really interesting transition for us. And I see the benefit in both and sort of enjoy straddling both worlds a little bit.
How has a ticketing system helped you?
Well, we actually haven't moved over to that yet.
How
but
do
we
you
are
think a
looking
ticketing
about-
system might help you?
It's about, well, capturing information about audiences and stuff like that, which is particularly pertinent to like the sort of the needs of funders. I think like being able to capture data, and not just for the funders, but like for yourself to know and react to what it is that people are looking for and people need, and the types of people who you're engaging and the types of people who you aren't engaging actually is going to be a really useful thing for us.
Brilliant. So we're going to come to you next, Joe. So Joe is director at Unlimited. Unlimited is an arts commissioning programme that aims to embed work by disabled artists within the UK and international cultural sectors, reach new audiences and shift perceptions of disabled people.
Welcome, Joe.
I'm poised and ready.
What is dynamism for you?
It's how do we do what we do but better? How do we keep looking to what's evolving and what's happening, the context in which we sit, and learn from that rather than pretending we're up in an ivory tower and just we've got one static model and that's it. But I really like the underlying kind of concept of ever evolving. I like to think about it as kind of having an action learning mentality. So everything is an iteration and we're trying it and then we put that in place and then we do something else and we see what works and we reflect. So that constant evolution.
How do you create, we're talking about your team now, a dynamic team or, you know, a evolving, flexible team at Unlimited? And do you see any changes in the implementation of this investment principle?
Well, we think we were dynamic before dynamic was the kind of buzzword.
Excellent.
In that we didn't have a single base. So we've always worked out of a number of different places. And now with the new Unlimited as an organisation, anybody can work for us living anywhere. You don't have to be in a particular city or be around a particular place. Everybody is able to homework. Equally, if homeworking isn't for you, we will find a local arts organisation where you can be planted. Because we also know that it doesn't work for everybody to work from home. If you're in a shared house with crap Wi-Fi, working from home has been a complete nightmare. But we also know that disabled people prefer to often be self-employed or work from home because for access, it is so much better if you can control your own environment. Travelling for me is exhausting. So if I don't have to travel, I don't get so tired. So I can actually do more work. We'd already been playing with all of those ideas before the pandemic came, which meant that we were really well prepared, oddly, for a lot of the changes that happened. We already had all the online systems, we already had all of those things in place. But that whole thing of how do we make it work for everybody, and that everybody actually mean everybody.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Pauline, we know that you are a multidisciplinary theatre maker and facilitator based in Leeds. And one of the things you say about yourself is that you consider yourself to be an artistic revolutionist, that you protest by making art that enables people to connect with each other. And we've got a couple more questions for you.
Do you think that being an artist and being artist-led helps build the qualities needed for this investment principle?
I've had such a prolific and adaptable and changeable career. So I've been a dancer. I'm a theatre maker at the moment. I sit on board, so I know about governance. I've set up my own kind of projects, and so I've had a solo show. So that means actually I feel that I'm much more better prepared to be able to go from an independent artist into being an organisation. But what I find interesting with that also is the fact that trying to go from an independent artist into an organisation is not something you can do on your own. You do have to find the people around you who's going to help you to do that. And so that's where I am at the moment, trying to find the right people to help me to get into a place where I can then think about, okay, I've had this massive range of abilities and talents. Let me really hone it. What's the thing that I'm really, really interested in right now? That's proving to be difficult at the moment, to be frank. I've literally just done 2 recruitment drives to find a producer to help me to set up my company, and both have failed. Now, there's a massive problem, I think, in terms of the subsidised Arts Council, whereby, I think it was like 2010, there was a real kind of, it felt to me there was a real urge from the Arts Council for independent artists and artists in general to work with producers. So I'm finding myself thinking, we've had 10 years, 12 years of this, and yet I can't find a producer. And it's not just me from an independent artist perspective. Companies, organisations across the country are also finding it difficult to find the right people to help them to move forward. So something, yes, we can turn around and say the pandemic is something that's responsible for that. But I also think that there's an issue in terms of the ways in which producers are coming in and who they're working with and how they get to the next level. And the next level is a level like mine, trying to set up a company. What's the best way of being able to have all of those skills involved so that it can actually help me to build my company and articulate that to anybody like stakeholders and funders, et cetera, et cetera. To have the Organisation Development Award from the Arts Council, I had to kind of like ensure that I had the right resources around me to be able to make these decisions. Now, I'm working with a regional and national theatre. And I'm also working with an independent producer as a consultant. Now, the problem is that, yeah, I want to work cross-sector, but the advice I was getting was, okay, you need to pitch this recruitment drive to the artistic sector. So I think there's a mismatch that's happening. We're saying, yes, let's talk about cross-sector work, but we're not actually enabling that in the thinking, in the day-to-day thinking of organisations. And then those organisations are then advising artists like myself. So there's a little bit of a chasm. Absolutely,
Yeah.
I think so.
And I think for us, like just doing was the bit that we thought was where we were being most creative. That's the bit where we're doing the art. And actually, I think the new investment principles are actually saying apply all of that creativity to all elements of your organisation.
Yeah.
So you can spend the time thinking about your strategy in a really creative, alternative, outside of the box way. And that's as valuable as how we might be on the street.
But I think in the actual doing in itself, that happens a lot anyway. Like I'm having to look at a 3-year creative plan and a 3-year business plan. Now, in my head, that's the same thing, right? But how do I put it in a form that I understand and I'm able to articulate and then be able to have a range of different audiences who understand it, who are not just going to be looking at it as, okay, it's a business plan, it needs to be set out like this. It's a creative plan and that's a slightly different thing. We're not going to worry about that because that's the bit that we know that you can do.
I think another thing that can really help is by inventing a governance structure that isn't old and boring or based on previous things. So we appointed a board, many of whom haven't been on boards before, a third of whom are under 30, really intersectionally diverse. And it's great. And empowered them to go, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. Which means everything you produce, you actually have to produce
Go through that filter.
Yeah, it's in plain English. It tells you what it does. We do board minutes in, we'll put board papers in essential and deeper. So the essential has to be one sheet of paper that tells you what we're going to talk about. That way, in that articulation of it to other people, you actually then understand it better yourself. Because I think quite often we ourselves hide behind a whole load of numpty words technical term, that we think the Arts Council want and we think they're the right words, but actually we don't even really know what we mean by them. And I think if this principle can do anything, hopefully it will allow us to be honest with ourselves about what we want to do, what we can do, what we can't do, what we don't know.
So we've covered it a little bit, but I'm going to ask it anyway because you might have more. What do you need to be creative, resilient, and innovative?
I mean, I think the first one is stability, and that's why I'm setting up my organisation. As somebody who is an independent artist, I'm having to go from thing to thing to thing, and not be able to think about what is the artwork that I want to make, and how can I ensure I have enough money to continue to make that art. So for me, first thing is stability. The second thing is to really hone in on the creativity of what I'm doing, rather than kind of like hustling and kind of like going from thing to thing to thing. What is the things that I'm really interested in? And the work that I tend to make always comes from that place of collaboration and conversation and dialogue. And those are the things that I place into the work that I do. It's a really difficult thing to do if you're trying to produce your own work, create your own work, market your own work, and then try to find other projects at the same time. So if I have the stability to be able to think about the creativity that I can do, and then be able to kind of bring in enough money so that I can actually do those things, and then be able to think forward in the practice that I'm doing.
So talking about our needs and sector collaboration,
Yes.
the cake's arrived.
Phew. It's very exciting. We have had this wonderful delivery from Ross from Out of the Woods, which is an independent coffee shop in Leeds. And if you want to go, which you should, because the cakes look fantastic, it can be found at Water Lane and Granary Wharf. How are the cakes?
Is everything better now? Is everything better now?
Everything's much better.
Everything's better now.
Yeah. New investment principle, cake.
Cake.
So we're going to go over to our Arts Council England representative now. So we want to hear your thoughts on all of this so far, and perhaps any further words of advice you might have about dynamism.
It's been fascinating to listen, and of course that's in part what it's all about for us. It isn't about us setting out a load of rules and regulations, it's about us offering a framework within which this kind of learning can happen with us and with each other. So I've learnt loads just by listening this morning, and I've been thinking we've used a lot of C words. Collaboration, creativity, not that one, cake, creativity. But the one I think is at the heart of dynamism is curiosity and change. And it's really about how we're using our kind of natural curiosities to respond to the change that's going on around us. And it's how we're enabling and supporting and allowing each other to learn, to get it wrong, to try again, but also the tools and the skills and the ways that we work, the processes, all of those sort of enabling things that we put in place for that to happen. I think that's the other important thing about all of the investment principles, but particularly about this one, is there isn't an expectation that everybody will do the same thing. It's got to be right for the organisation, for the practice, for the the context that you're operating in, and for the scale and size of your ambitions and so on. It's not. There's nothing kind of thou shalt do.
Yeah.
It's
a volunteer-led museum is not going to do the same as an independent artist or a commissioning
Nor
body,
should they.
or or a live art organisation. They're all going to be different.
Exactly right. Genuinely, we're looking for people to tell us as well, and I think that's the other thing I hope is true about working with the Arts Council, is that it is a two-way street, and we need to be challenged and pushed and told what we need to hear.
But it's this bit on, keep coming back to the data bit or the information bit, because when I was reading dynamism, I was like, oh that's, yeah. And then it was like, and data and information. And I was like, huh? But then there's the ever evolving world and technologies and things like the metaverse and all of these things, or VR, or whatever you want to say, but technology.
The way I think about it is that data is just it's information. So it's how information is stored and analysed and shared. And then it's what you do with that. It's the intelligence that you get out of that. It's what that tells you and what therefore you decide. So you might do a load of research with your audiences or people that have taken part in a show, and it's how you distill that and bring it to you in a useful format that says, well, what does that tell us about what was good or bad or not about that show, and what are we going to do about it? So I think data is sort of one of those kind of something that sort of sounds like it's something over there, but it's not. It's just a source of information, and it's how you use it. But that sense of going back to your purpose and your mission and the kind of just making sure you're making the choice that's right for what you want to do, not because it's what you think you should be doing because someone else is doing it. It's like, well, actually, what am I doing? What's the point? And what's the thing that will enable me to do that? And trying not to get kind of too mystified by all of the options.
We've got one more question for you, Liz, that we prepared. There was a lovely local earlier on, did a pre-record for us. So take a listen.
How can we avoid stagnancy and embrace change without feeling unsafe? Will we produce a constant anxiety in this expectation? How do you balance the need for flexibility and security and use risk wisely? Do you prefer Minecraft or Harry Potter?
Great questions. And they're really hard, aren't they? I mean, part of my answer to that might be, I don't know, but I do care. What dynamism doesn't mean is more, now, quick. I don't think. It means make the changes that you feel are right to respond to what is going on around you and to enable the work that you want to make.
And of course, David asked another question, Minecraft or Harry Potter?
Because I'm books, I love reading, it's got to be Harry Potter.
David, it's Harry Potter. Okay. We caught up with Alan of Slung fame earlier on, and going to hear that now.
We are, but before we do, Slung was founded in 2000, and it's an award-winning theatre company specialised in making epic productions. They quite like pyrotechnics and stuff in non-theatre spaces, often with large community performance companies at the heart.
Thanks for welcoming us into your home, Alan. It's great to meet you.
You're incredibly welcome.
Can you tell us a bit about how all of this came about?
We moved into the Holbeck about 3 years ago. It's the oldest working men's club in Britain, and like an awful lot of these venues that are community held, they're going through a rough time. It's not a good time to be running a pub in South Leeds. So it was on its knees, and we just got a theatre tax relief payment, which we weren't keen to keep. But we could pay off all the debts of the club with that money, and then we moved in as managers, and we've been doing that for the last 3 years.
Now, on the investment principle, are you ready, Alan? What does dynamism mean to you?
I think for us, dynamism has its most impact, its most meaning when we're talking about how we can immediately react to what our communities need. Most obviously, we became a food bank overnight because that's what was needed, but equally that's just the story that most people know about. We built a stage outside because that's what our community needed. We opened a community football club because that's what they needed. And I think for me, being dynamic is applying your skills, your energy, your talent, and your investment from the Arts Council to achieving whatever it is that your community needs.
How might this investment principle make better art?
I think anybody who isn't being dynamic is probably not making great art. I think that the idea of responding to the world is what artists are for. It's our job to dream about better and other ways of being. And for me, that is being dynamic. It's going with the tides and understanding where the energy is and understanding what society needs you to do. I don't understand people who stand still for very long.
What makes a resilient team?
Team. I'm in a gang of 4, and as a result, I feel a foot taller than I would feel if I was on my own. I've never done anything difficult without being in a team, and I can't imagine how difficult it would be to try and do any of this on my own.
If dynamism was an animal, what would it be?
It would be a snow leopard.
Thanks again for having us, Alan. We love it here. It's the end.
But before we go, we have one final question for the panel. What is the best thing about this investment principle?
Change and flexibility, I would say.
chance to reinvent stuff, not just do it the old way, because that's the way it's always been done.
Curiosity. It's all the C's so far, isn't it? It's curiosity.
I was going to say that. So I'm going with creativity and collaboration.
And despite my reservations, it's time for, Darton's IP takeaway. What do you like to call it?
Darton's digestion.
Darton's digestion.
Dynamism. If your engine isn't working, you can't play. Maintenance, improve, upgrade, modernise.
Thanks very much. And on that note, this was IPTV, and we will see you next time. Massive thanks to our panel. See you next time on IPTV. Goodbye.